be stitching together the bell of the tent, which is the back part. It's called a bell because it has a slight curvature to it. It looks rounded, which is the back, and that's what we're doing. So it's called a bell because it has here we go. Rounded, and that's what here we go. So I have my helper Scout. Here we go. My happy little kitten with us. She showed up in a tree in our yard about a week ago. Well, a little less than a week. Kitten with us. She showed up in a tree part of our yard family here. Well, a little less than a week. Kitten with us. She loves string. She loves twine, and she likes electrical cords. And she's got a little. Her favorite toy seems to be a foil ball. So maybe she's running around electrical cords, having fun with that. Her favorite toy seems to be a foil ball. All right, here we go. Right, we're live. Everything's good. I hope the audio quality is good. If you can, comment in the chat if you can't hear what I'm saying. I hope the audio quality. If I know that what I'm saying is being heard but isn't interesting, I'll make it more interesting. You can't hear. I'll do my best to be entertaining as I know that the primary purpose of being here is the work. So here we go. What I have are 3 triangles. I'm working on 2 at a time. Here we go. I'm going to connect these 2, and then when they're done, I'm going to connect this 3rd one to it. Lay this out. These 2, keep it flat, and then wrinkle. When they're done, mark this 3rd one to it, and this out. These 2, keep it flat, and then that's what we got. So these first 2 go together, and then this one gets attached to that also. So, and then we'll have the back of the tent. So here we go. These first 2 go together, and then this one gets attached to that also. So, and we'll have raise this just a bit. So here we go. How about that? Is that better? Yeah, slightly. All right, so, excuse me, may I have this? Thank you. How about that? Is that better? So I've got my waxed twine. Yeah, I have my linen panels cut. All right, so, and when I cut them, I made these marks to align them. So I want them to line up just like that. Now line the selvage, which is this woven edge at the edge of the linen piece that's woven. And when I cut them, with the cut edge of the other panel. So I want them, and then I use what's called a spaced back stitch. Now line the selvage, which is connect the 2 pieces into one. Woven edge at the edge of the linen piece that's woven. When I cut them, right now I'm just getting them aligned and also kind of adjusting the tension on them. I don't want these pulling. I don't want it stretched or too loose, too tight. I just want it to kind of lie there. Right now I'm just getting as if it was one piece, and then when I stitch it together, the tension goes together. Pulling. So here we go. So we're going to start here with our first stitch. This first one I'm going to put a little knot in. Kind of lie there. It's probably not even necessary, but as if it is one piece. And then when I stitch it together, the tension goes together. Start here with our first stitch. This first one I'm going to put a little knot in. It's probably not even. There we are. All right. All right, we're starting. So here we go. The spaced back stitch is. There we are. All right. You wind up with what looks like a dashed line. So you go in, you skip. All right, we're starting. You make a stitch, maybe an 1/8, slightly larger than an 1/8 inch long, and then you go into the fabric and skip the same distance and come out. So you're going to go in, you make a stitch, and you go 3 over, make a stitch, I think of it, and then you come back out. And you wind up with this dashed line on the visible side, and then the part that's hidden, when the tent is complete, will look like almost a continuous line. I think of it on the opposite side. It's very simple. If you keep it consistent and consistent pressure and distance apart, it looks nice and it is strong. On the opposite side. very simple, visible, so you can keep it consistent pressure. If you have a kitten to help you, distance apart, she can be fascinated by the motions of the thread. In this case, it's twine. It's a heavy linen cord. Wax, beeswax for, well, partly to lubricate it and partly to protect it from the abrasion of the linen fabric that I'm sewing through. You're going into this dozens and dozens of times, and beeswax, if you don't protect it, it can wear through to lubricate it. And this is how, as far as I know, I was told, and this is by a reputable source, actually by a couple of experts who should know. This is how it was done in the 18th century, and everything I do in this, I am for, as far as I know, I was told how they did it in the 18th century. That's my main thing. I want to create tents that, that is as close to what might have been used in 1778 or so. How they did it in the 18th century. That's my main. That if somehow there was a time machine and this tent was transported back there, nobody would notice that it's any different than the ones that were created that year. What might have been used in 1778. Part of the purpose for that is I like experimental archaeology. I like to make stuff like it was made a long time ago and then use it transported back there as close as we can recreate conditions for how and why it was used, and then you can find out all the stuff that they never bothered to write down. Experimental archaeology. You can learn things that don't show up in any history books, but gives us a better understanding of the time and people. Recreate conditions for how and why they made decisions the way they did. Find out all the stuff that they never bothered to write down. Experimental archaeology. You can learn things that don't show up in any history books, but gives us a better understanding of the time and people. We're off to a good start, aren't we? Scout. How and why they made decisions. What do you think? Look nice?
So I think we are, there you can see in raking light, and I realize that my camera's sort of low res, but that should give you a good indication of what it looks like there. And then on the back you have what appears to be almost a continuous line. So raking light.
You go in, you skip a space, you make a stitch, skip a space, stitch, skip a space, and so on. You can do it also.
What it looks like there.
I think Washington's Marquee, which is reproduced for the Museum of the American Revolution in Philadelphia. I think Washington's Marquee was actually done with a backstitch, which is this, but every space is filled in. So this side would be a continuous line. So it's more stitches and maybe stronger, but also a greater force of space on it. It's larger surface area, so it's, I think of these things kind of like sails. If you set these up, more strong wind hits it, if it's soaked with rain, it's going to be very heavy. And the water weighs 8 pounds a gallon, so greater force of space.
How many gallons of,
Surface area, so it's,
I don't know how many yards
of linen go into the Marquee, but these are about 28 or 30 yards of 27 or so inch wide linen.
how many gallons?
That is an awful lot of weight to be carried by a large, relatively flat surface. And if that's any wind, say in a thunderstorm or something like that, tremendous forces exerted on it. The bigger the tent, bigger the sail, the higher the forces. In this case, I think my experience has shown, we have a tent over there that I made more than 10 years ago. And I used it in all kinds of weather: snow, rain, sleet, sunny, beautiful weather, wind, everything. And it has held up perfectly well, and that's how this was set. So that's how we did all kinds of weather: snow, rain, sleet, sunny, beautiful weather. We don't have any examples of American tents from the American Revolution, apart from Washington's Marquee, as far as I know. I would love to be able to examine one. We don't have any examples of American. I know there are a couple of tents from about the same period in Austria. Washington's Marquee is Berg Fortenstein. I'd love to had an acquaintance go there and
take a number of really good quality photographs. Other people were a couple of tent photos and measurements. Studied that, studied documents of the period. It's one of the things I looked at is that there's a treatise called An Essay on Casternutation by an officer called Lochee, Lochee, of the British Army. And I think that's 1768 or 1778. Very helpful. He included engravings with a scale in them, so they're scale drawings, and provided the measurements and pretty good description of the tent. And so that combined with other information they found at different places, I think including Fort Ligonier in Pennsylvania, western Pennsylvania, and some other places, maybe Ticonderoga too. Examples of Revolutionary War tent poles, some of the ironwork that went into them, and other things that have helped inform the reconstruction, recreation of the tents that the American soldiers were using. And so, here we are. Bitterly cold outside, but fairly comfortable indoors. Night in winter. And so, making a tent. Now I'm just making one. During the Revolution, of course, they had to make hundreds of them. And a lot of them early in the war. In 1775, 76, they're starting to create the army. They're recruiting men, marching into the capitals, and outfitting them. And they needed a place for a lot of them to live. Early in the war. And 1775. So tents were the thing. A lot of times they would do other things. You go to Valley Forge, you can see the cabins that they built. And they needed a place for a lot of them. Certain on the road, well, sometimes they slept in tents. Do not scratch that furniture, please. A lot of times they were. You go to Valley Forge, you can see the cabins. There are descriptions of them sleeping under the stars. They slept in tents. They slept in houses and barns. Well, sometimes they slept in cabins, all kinds of places. We know they had tents. That's what I'm making. The descriptions, a linen tent, this is what they used. This material is very close to some original or 18th century examples of material that was used for tents. As is the twine, the rope, and the other things that go into it. This is what they used. This material is very close to some original. The idea here is we make it as close to the best research we can. It's close to what they used with twine, what we think they had used, and as we get new information, we change our methods or designs. And work up best research. A little time machine here. Close to what they, that's how I think it is. It's a time machine. Climb into this at the end of the long day. Methods or designs. And Revolutionary War clothing, breeches, or your time machine. Petticoats, in case I need. You wake up in it. Climb into this at a certain day with the sun coming through the linen. You survive the thunderstorm. Revolutionary War clothing. And you spend a few restful hours in a time machine. Wake up in it. That's what we do. Sun coming through. Survive the thunderstorm. So making decent progress here. The stitches I like to check periodically to be sure that they're fairly even, that the pressure is consistent, that the lines are nice. This looks good. That's nice. I don't want the stitches too far apart, too long, too short. The stitches I like to close together. I just there's a width that I find is good, and this looks good. Makes for a strong tent. I don't want the stitches too far apart, too long, too short. Even support all along. What happens is once this is sewed together and then set up as a tent, these seams become like structural ribs, almost like in a ship. And so they they provide some strength, even support all along. What happens is, once this is, the linen panels themselves, they'll stretch and they'll contract, they get wet, dry out. The wind pushes against them, or they provide some strength. They can move a little bit more easily than these seams. The seams are locked in by the stitches to some degree. They'll still stretch a bit, I think, and contract a little bit. That's negligible. Wind pushes against them. What we're really after is consistency. So I just try to more easily than these seams. The seams are locked in by the do it to some degree. Well, once and then do it well another 1,400 times or however many it is. I've counted stitches in these a couple of times. That was years ago. I don't really think about the number too many or too often. Well, once and then do it well another 1,400. Just kind of do it, you know. I counted. They didn't make the 10. That was years ago. I don't really think about the number too many or too often. Well, once and then do it. Just kind of do it, you know. Counted. They didn't make the 10. Spent the weekend reading Twitter and watching YouTube and seeing all this drama from these professional YouTubers and artists on YouTube. People are all spent the weekend up in arms about one thing or another and watching YouTube. And it makes for really interesting streams. Drama from these professional YouTube. I'm afraid I don't have any drama here. Artists, I think it's just sort of consistent. I think I want some really. I gotta create some drama. I need to create. I want to grow my channel. So I think I'm gonna have to start some controversy, make an apology video, or make a video excoriating someone or other. That seems to be the pattern for YouTube success. In my case, I'll count YouTube success as somebody watching my video and having to start some controversy. My series of videos on tent making and then making a tent, someone or other, using them in some way and saying, hey, here's some pictures of my tent. Thank you for your help. That I'll count as success. I do want to grow the channel. My series of videos, tent making and then making a tent. I'll endeavor to make interesting content. Here's some pictures of my tent and useful stuff. That's the goal of what I'm doing. I want it to be interesting and entertaining so that you want to watch it. And useful to make interesting content. I suppose to make it interesting and entertaining, I should probably talk about space aliens during the revolution, or interesting and entertaining so that you want to watch controversies between the general and subordinates lead. I suppose to make it interesting and entertaining, I should probably not really interested in making that sort of thing. That sort of video. Controversies between the general. Started making videos when I was a teenager, a long time ago. I started my YouTube channel a long time ago, but I didn't do a whole lot with it. I was busy with other things in life. In the past year or two, I really watched a lot of YouTube, and I thought, well, you know, some of the things I do might be useful for other people to see, because a dear friend of mine died suddenly, younger than I am, and watched a lot of YouTube. Didn't know it. Didn't know he didn't know he was ill until the day before he died. And in fact, not sure he ever knew he was going to die. I think he just went. Maybe that's merciful. Didn't know it. I was thinking, I've done a lot of research and a lot of work to learn certain things, and it may be useful that my time may be more limited than I know, and that if there's some record of the things that I've learned by a lot of research and trial and error and some hard work and a little bit of luck and a lot of help from other people. I should stress that part. Almost everything I know is somebody else has showed me, taken their time to help me, trial and error, show me how to do stuff. I guess people talk about
pay it forward. I think that might have been that. Was that Gene Hackman years ago? I'm not sure.
Somebody else has showed me.
I don't know. Anyway, I like the idea of, I don't think of it as paying forward, I think of, in some way, passing on, somebody took the time to show me how to do every single step of what I'm doing here. Anyway, at least to describe it to me. I like the idea. At some point or another, I think, in the case of sewing, everybody, you know, or everything I do, somebody showed me by some generous person who took at least a few minutes of his time over time to enlighten me or another. I think show me how to do things better. Sewing. Neil Hurst showed me how to hold a needle. A hunting shirt workshop a long time ago. The first stitches I ever made on anything. Well, the first stitches I ever made with my mother. When I first got into reenacting when I was a teenager, she showed me how to help me sew a shirt from a hunting shirt. And I took a couple workshops. The guy leading the workshop showed me how to hold a needle properly. I bought a haversack kit. Haversack, for those of you who aren't reenactors, in the 18th century anyway. It's think of it like a purse. It's not. It's like an envelope of linen with a strap. I ordered a kit from a guy named Lloyd and Jackie. He and his wife established a business supplying things to reenactors. Think of it like a purse. Everything we do is not available on Amazon or Walmart or modern shops. Somebody has to make it all. So I ordered this kit. I'm going to make a haversack, and he had this kit. He had done a few inches of stitching on that strap, and just because he took the time to do that, I was able to figure out how. Maybe I could do that. I picked up a needle and some. He had done a thread that was 2 inches of stitching on that strap. Made some mistakes, but I was able to figure out how to do it. That kind of set me off on hand sewing things. Maybe I could do that. And then a lot of other people, Mark Hunter and some other experts, who are true experts, made some mistakes, but world leader experts. I take the time to show me hand sewing things, more than a thing or two about 18th century material culture and how things were done in the past. True experts. And then I get very helpful little kittens like this who keep it from becoming too staid and a thing or two about lonely and boring. Thank you, Scout. How things were done. Glad you're here too. And then I get very helpful little kittens like this who I'm just going to ramble. I've got a strong cup of coffee and a needle and thread and twine. 30 yards of linen, and we're going to make something useful here. I'm just going to ramble. I've got a strong cup of coffee and a needle and thread. I think when I'm done, and I mentioned this in a previous live stream too, when I'm done with this, I'm going to, at least I'd like to, edit these down to a simple instructional video. If you want to make a Revolutionary War era tent, here's how. And I'll just cut out. I mean, once you've seen me do a foot of this, you get the point, right? So do this several thousand more times. If you want to make a Revolutionary War era tent, it'll be something like that. You don't need to watch every stitch. I'm glad you are, though, if you are watching this. Once you've seen me do a foot of this, you get down there. It's just me, but do this. Several thousand more times. Other live streams I've got have been getting a little bit of traction lately, and that's gratifying. Somebody's got something out of it. Other live streams I've got have been getting a little bit of traction lately, and that's gratifying. So once you get into a rhythm on these, it goes pretty smoothly, and you're able to get through the fabric. This is very heavy linen. Sometimes I've made tents out of thinner linen, which was period correct also. Once you get into a rhythm on these, it goes pretty smoothly. Same kind of tent, the same design, but
But they often used what they could afford, or what was available. Made tents out of thin. At the time, everything was hand woven, everything was handmade. Virtually everything was handmade. Same kind of linen was the same design, but woven by hand, and so sometimes there were shortages, plus they needed a lot of it all at once. At the time, some of the tents were thinner material, which sews even more easily than this. This stuff is occasionally very difficult to get through. Woven by hand, sometimes there were shortages. Sore fingers, numb nerves. So just a tip, if you're doing this, take periodic breaks to just rest your fingers, so you don't damage your nerves. I've done that in the past, just pushed through, did a marathon sewing session, got the tent done, blasted through it, but then I couldn't feel my hands for a week. Periodic breaks to just rest. In the real world, the modern time, I'm a painter, and I need to be able to feel my fingers. So, push through, it's not a marathon sewing session, not a sacrifice I am willing to able to make, just use or sensation in your hands. Anyhow, when you get into a rhythm with this, it not only goes quickly, it is, if you're doing it right, it's consistent, the width, the spacing of the stitches is consistent, pressure, everything else, just, it's not quite machine sewed, but it feels something like that when you look at it and hold the finished product. It kind of feels, well, not really machine made, but pressure, well done. It's not quite machine sewed, it feels, also have to untwist it occasionally. Twine already has a natural twist and tends to bind up after it. Well, it's not really machine made. Pressure, well done. Oh, and the other thing is, it seems that when I'm going quick with yours, kind of in this machine-like way, it just naturally, this needle, I use a blunt needle rather than a sharp one. Sharp one, other thing is, I did a couple with a sharp needle, and they tend to cut the threads that make up the fabric rather than push between them. So I switched to a blunt needle a number of years ago. And I like that better because it seems to push between the warp and the weft fibers. And when you're just rolling along like this, it seems to just naturally find its way through more easily. I like that better because it seems to push. So now we are at, got several feet done in a fairly short period of time. I like to, if you're making one of these, this is for you. I tend to do a couple of feet usually and then pull between my thumb and forefinger and just try to even this, even these stitches out there. It is handmade, you want the pressure to be evenly distributed, so, and it's only moving a couple of feet, it's a very tiny amount, but I think it helps. Never measured it, but I have done it and not done it on tents, and the ones that I've done it with seem to be more even. Very tiny amount, but and stimulates the blood flow. Never measures it, but probably not. I have done it and not done it. I don't think it hurts. Seem to be more even. Thank you, Scout. And stimulates the flow. Never measures it, but probably not. I have done it and not done it. I don't think it hurts. So one of the things you want to pay attention to is the alignment of the cut edge with the selvage edge here. I'm just following this line of selvage. It creates a guideline, really. One of the things you want to pay attention to is see now the alignment, lost my rhythm, and now it's starting to force through. So I'm just naturally finding the space between the following this line. Once it gets rolling, it should do it more easily. It creates a guideline. Rhythm, and it's starting to force through, so I'm just naturally finding space between following this once it gets rolling. It should do it. Creates a guideline. There we go. Rhythm, and it's starting to force through, so I'm just naturally finding space between following this once it gets rolling.
thinking of it, I'm going to post a link to this stream on Facebook, and maybe some of my friends who are historically minded and interested in this sort of thing might be interested in seeing this. Okay. While I'm thinking of it, I'm going to post a link to this stream. I don't know what we're going to find out. I'll post it, and if there are folks who are interested, maybe they'll join us.
Oh, excuse me. Look out.
Maybe.
Over here.
They're historical minded, interested in this sort of thing, might be interested in seeing this. While I'm thinking of it, I'll post a link to this stream. Find out, post it, and if there are folks who are interested, maybe they'll join us.
Excuse me.
And here we go. They're historical minded, interested in this sort of thing, might be interested in seeing this. Think of it. I'll post a link to this stream. Find out, post it. Folks who are interested, maybe they'll join us. I have no idea what this is, no. Okay, and here we go. Of course. Okay, dude, come on, man, you know, I don't know that, okay, I can't do that. Again, Facebook is, I have no idea, really kind of, hit or miss on quality. Here we go. Alright, here, let's post here, paste, post, of course. Oh, you know what? Let's change this to, there you go. Cancel. Okay, dude. Alright, let's see what happens. You know, I don't know. Alright. Yeah. So, got a link up. Wait a minute, it's not really kind of refresh. So, got a link up. And what is happening here? Really kind of. It is not responding. Is it responding or not? So, got a link up. And what is happening here? It is not responding. If you will bear with me for just a moment, I'm having a technical glitch, possibly, I'm not sure. If you will bear- Stream is healthy, stream health is excellent, stream status excellent. All right, never mind. Good. Bear with me for just a moment. I'm having a, somebody was on and they dropped out. Yeah, well. Bear with me. So that's how it goes. Here we go. Well, I'm gonna take this opportunity to stretch my legs and get a cup of coffee, and I will be right back. Meanwhile, hopefully the kitten will be entertaining.
Then we will come back and we'll finish the rest of the back stitching on this piece. We're past the halfway point, which is very good.
And we will come back
And then we attach that piece to this assembly. Carry it, got hot coffee, stretch my legs a bit. Got a cute kitten. And we're past the halfway point on this seam, so let's carry it. So I'm running a space back stitch on this edge here. I'm going to fell it down once it's done. I'll press it with an iron just to flatten it out. And then we have half the back of the tent done. The other half is there. This will be one assembly, these two pieces put together. I'll put that triangle on, and then that's the entire back. All that gets sewn onto the body of the tent, which is one assembly, these two pieces folded together, piled over there. Triangle on, and then that's the entire back. We're well on the way to finishing this. I made the doors already. They are stitched together, fell down, and
ready to do, after this is done, we're ready to put them together and hem the door opening parts. That's not really complicated, except it's important to get them, to get the angles right. If you're ever making one of these, you want, not really complicated. Of course, you want them to be perfectly vertical.
It's important to get them.
I say perfectly,
the angles right.
you know, that's sort of a relative thing. I want them parallel to one another. I want them perpendicular to the ground in the tents put up.
It's important to get them.
I say perfect. I don't know that I've ever camped on a perfectly flat piece of ground. I want them parallel to one another. You get the idea. And you want to. This is a geometric construction, so if you pay attention to that sort of thing the best you can as you go, you'll wind up with an attractive. This is a geometric construction, so tent when you're done. Pay attention to that sort of thing the best you can as you go, you'll wind up with an attractive. This is a geometric construction. One of the things that happens is stuff twists up a bit, so every once in a while you have to untangle, or you wind up with a Gordian knot. There we go. One of the things that happens is stuff twists up, so every once in a while. Tonight, I've been able to establish a pretty good rhythm with this stitching. It's people talk about hand sewing as if it's some sort of great mystery. People have been sewing things for at least 4,000 years. I just saw a picture of a shirt, an Egyptian linen shirt. People talk about hand sewing. I think it's about 3,800 years old. People have been sewing. Just 3 or 4 days ago on Twitter, somebody posted this thing from, I think it's in an Egyptian museum. It was amazing. It was, actually it was 2 shirts. I think there was a man's and a woman's. They're beautiful. Like they're, you know, they wouldn't look out of place on a, you know, a beachside cafe today. Really simple design, well made, simple. Up until about 1840, when the sewing machine was invented, everything that people wore was hand stitched. Simple design, well made. You know, people talk about it today like it's something of great mystery. It's just not common, but it is. People talk about it today like it's an ancient practice. It's just not common. And I suppose, had I been brought up in this in tent making or sail making as a trade, an ancient practice. I don't know, faster or more efficient or something. And I've been sewing for a number of years, so I've done a number of tents and made a bunch of 18th century clothing, breeches and jackets and waistcoats and shirts and hunting shirts and things for a number of years. So, you know, with practice, you get better at it, but it's just getting that practice. There are not a whole lot of complicated things to do. It's just a lot of things to pay attention to, but with practice, you get better at it. Just getting that practice. The first few things you make, never sewn by hands before. The first few things you make, you'll be proud of them, you'll be pleased with them, and then you'll make some more things, and then you'll look back at the other things and say, oh, you know, I've improved. Few things you make, you might not be as charitable toward your own stuff. You'll be proud of them toward other people's. Like I said, boy, I was sloppy. But then you make the improvements, and the next thing you make is a little bit better, and the next thing you make is a little bit better. Sloppy. To paraphrase Pink Floyd and Time. And then one day you'll find 10 years have got behind you. Paraphrase. And you're good at sewing. Well, or at least competent. And then one day you'll find 10 years have got behind you. Paraphrase. Here you go. So I'm about ready to attach a new piece of twine to this. I've got just a couple more feet here. You know, about a little less than 2.5 feet left to go on this piece. And then I'll do the same, just reversed. I'm going to attach that other panel to this assembly. And when that's all done, I'll iron this flat, and just this seam gets folded over, and then the selvage gets felled down, as they say, which is just a simple whip to stitch it down, and that keeps it from fraying and getting in the way, and makes it stronger as it goes too. Which is just a simple whip So I'll be doing that soon. As soon as this line is done. Frame, getting in the way. Then we have the entire back of the tent done, which is a nice milestone to hit.
It's one of the things about these tents. They're the way I think about them is it's all milestones. I've got so many feet to do. It's one of the things about these tents. I don't really think of it in terms of feet. The way I think about it, I think of it as assembly. I build the body of the tent, which is just 3 long panels. I really think of it in terms of prepare all the linen and period correct widths. Stitch the body together. That's one assembly, and I make the back of the tent. I make the doors and I assemble them, and then I connect them all. Put the front on, put the back on, and then you have a complete tent. And then you make the doors, set it up, and you do the entire. Do a hem around the base of it, put the grommets in, and you have a complete. Before you know it, you have a tent. Place for someone to live. You take care of it. It'll last a very long time. You have a tent. I mean, I've used mine for. Well, I know it's at least 10 years, and I think maybe 15 years since we made it. I'll have to use mine for. I'll have to look it up, but I know it's at least maybe almost 15 years since we made that tent. We've used it all over the place. Different events. Yorktown to Williamsburg. Almost 15 years since we made Southern Ohio, Northern Ohio, Pennsylvania. Used it all over the place. Yorktown and all kinds of weather, snow, frost, Pennsylvania, summer heat, all over the place. Thunderstorms, all kinds of weather. It's just about as nice as it was the day we made it, and the first time we used it, which was the same day. We finished it, and nice as it was that night we made it. The first time we used it, which was the militia unit we were with, which is we finished it, recreating a 1770s frontier militia. We were camping, and we took it out. We met out at the out in the woods where we were camping. Set it up, and then that night we had a tremendous thunderstorm, and my wife was still speaking to me in the morning, so that was my test for how comfortable is this. It turns out it was great. That night we had a tremendous thunderstorm. When it rains, you get a slight mist through it. You see the raindrops starting to hit and soak through, and get a bit of a mist through, but then once the water saturates the linen, and then when it gets fully saturated, you get all surface tension. And then physics works in your favor to help shed water. As long as you don't touch the inside of the tent, you can stay fairly comfortable. The water works in your run off, and it'll blow around it, shed water. That's pretty good. Okay, so we're ready for the next piece of twine here. Blow around it. Okay, so we're ready for the next piece of twine here. Store my needle, put some beeswax on my thread, and here we go. Store my needle, maybe a little beeswax on my thread. I think it almost is. That's a little bit too long. I don't like to have the too much of a reach, but I'm going to trim that a bit. I like to be I like it long, but too much. I like that you can draw with one pull of your arm. I like to be I like it long, but actually it turns out to be a little bit more efficient than trying to do it with all one. Plus, by the end of the line on a long one, long thread or twine, you get some degradation of the quality. Plus, by the end of the line, the twine. Long thread or twine, you get. So I'm going to do a degradation of the quality. Let's just go right here. Right there? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to pull this through, and I'll do just a simple square knot here. It's probably not necessary, but it's just a. I'm going to pull this practice through. I was about to. Just a simple square knot here, and it is
worked, so I continue to do it.
Then this knot gets tucked under this finished seam, so it's never seen, and it helps prevent
The stuff from pulling out as you
this
saw.
knot gets tucked under
And as it's used,
seam, so it's never seen, and it helps prevent
the stuff from pulling out as you saw.
this knot.
And as it's used. All right, here we go. And as it's used. All right, here we go. These being natural materials, they have natural inconsistencies and I don't want to call them defects, but you know, some parts of the twine are thicker than others. Some of the linen itself is a little, I don't want to call them defects, but less easy to work than others. And it's mostly very consistent. You do get some inconsistencies, so as you're working with this stuff, if you're new to it, just have to adapt and go to it. You do get some inconsistencies. You're not going to get machine-like precision with hand sewing, but you can approach it. If you look at 18th century examples of sewing, even 19th, excuse me, hand sewing, 19th century examples, in other words, in the period, and probably today too, but if you look at the time period before sewing machines became common, everything was made and sewed by hand. Probably today too. Find stuff that looks, time period before, it's almost magic. I think Isaac Asimov said something like, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. You look at some of the stitches, the fineness of them, the consistency of them, any sufficiently advanced, they're repeated across a garment or a hand or something like this. They're just so cleanly done, so consistent, so even, something like this. You can make that a goal, but the thing is, when you're learning how to do this stuff, when you're just doing it practically, make that a goal. Try to improve on everything you do. When you're learning how to do this stuff, you make a shirt, a pair of breeches, or a tent. Try to do that well, and everything you do. Be critical of it. I mean, enjoy it. Appreciate what you've accomplished, but then look at it with an eye toward improvement on the next one you do. Be critical of it. And the next one you do will do that, be even better. You may really like what you may really like what you've done. Next one you do will like what you've done, and then even better. Try even to improve upon that. You may really like what you've done. And it helps to have an energetic kitten to help you with your sewing, particularly one who needed a warm place to live. This little friend showed up last week. My wife got home from the store at, I think it was like 7 or 8 at night. Showed up, came in, carrying whatever she had with her, and grabbed a flashlight and said, "I just heard a kitten outside." We live out in the country. And she went out there, and I followed her out in the light. We searched for a few minutes, and heard this little one talking. Turns out she was about 10 feet up in this ancient maple tree we have, and I don't know how she got there. It was freezing, so we brought her in. And we were looking for a shelter for her. I don't know how she got there. We talked to a couple, and they seem to be full. They're having, I don't know if they're having difficulty adopting out all the cats that they take care of, but talked to a couple, for whatever reason they couldn't take her. And I don't know if they're having difficulty. Took her down to the neighbors. She didn't belong to any of them, didn't wander off. We don't know where she came from or how she got here. I don't know if she was abandoned or if she wandered off from one of the neighboring farms or what. She's, for as long as she wishes, she's now going to be a permanent resident here. And as our other cats who've also come in the same way. They wandered into the property. One of them was very ill and near death. And the other one was just a little kitten. This is a good place to be a little cat. And so, judging by the way she chases twine and
This is a good place to be a little cat.
gets a string and things, she's going to be an excellent mouser. So she'll earn her keep too. Although that's not a requirement. String and appreciate it. Things, she's going to be an excellent mouser. So she'll earn her keep too. Although that's not a requirement. So we're near the wire here. We got just a few inches to go on this piece, and then I'm going to basically do the exact same thing on this next panel. We'll attach it to the other side of the centerpiece. This is the outer edge. And this will connect to the tent in the back, connect to the body of the tent. This forms the back of the tent. And once these two are done, I'll do the back stitching on this, attach the other one. I will then iron this down just to open it up. And the only, I have no idea whether they did that in the late 18th century or any other period for that matter, but I know from experience that helps me sew it because it keeps it open and flat, and I don't have to exert as much pressure as that helps sew it, and it comes out with a nicer result than it open. So flat. Anyway, so I'll iron this down and with a lot of steam. It's one of the nice things about linen, is you hit it with steam and it holds its shape. Anyway, so I'll iron this down and here we go. One of the things you want to do is keep these holds its shape. You don't want any buckles, bunches in this. One of the things you want to do is smooth the seam and then just this last little bit here. Buckles. And actually, I am past the point. I'm going to stop here. So here's my mark. This is, I have a template that I made to help me cut these panels. This is the end of my template. I'm going to need a few inches past this that'll get folded up. This is at the very end. That'll become a hem and it gets whipped across here, and then the grommets go in here, straddling each of the seams. I've gone beyond that, so I'm probably going to rip out some of these stitches because of just the geometry as it's set up when it becomes a three-dimensional object rather than a two-dimensional object. Rip out some of these stitches. I'm probably going to have to pull, probably about 4 inches of this. I'm just going to stop it here. I like to cut these a little bit larger, so if you're making one of these, I would recommend you do that. I have in the past, in fact, on my first tent over there, I didn't make it long enough to cut one of the corners. You're making one of them, I think maybe 2 of the corners, and had to add, in fact, material or piece it in, add a piece. That's a period correct solution for when that happens, and for also reusing and being just very efficient with fabric and clothing. And so I suppose it's not authentic to do that on a tent also. I don't know if they did that on General Washington key. It's not, probably check on that. Authentic to do that on the Museum of the American Revolution had a very highly accurate reproduction of one of the existing tents used by General Washington during the Revolution. Very highly accurate. My guess is that if it had been pieced, they would have reproduced that in the thing. Right? They went to great lengths to use the same kind of material, same weight, same weave, same stitching. It's kind of an amazing project. You can find it on YouTube and just Google Museum of the American Revolution, Washington's Marquee, MARQUE. You can find it on YouTube. It's a really neat project they did a number of years ago. Kind of a national treasure that they help preserve. Okay, so anyway, we've got the bell, or part of the bell. There is. Let's see if I can get this in the baking light. Let's see what the stitch looks like. Part of the bell. There is. Kind of. My light's not perfect. There we go. That's light. Sort of it. Anyway, got a fairly consistent seam all along this edge here. On the back, it looks kind of like a continuous line. Sort of it. Anyway,
got a fairly
consistent
that there.
seam all along
And
this
then this
edge
will,
in the back.
when it's done, after I attach that piece,
Continuous line.
after I attach that piece, you can see that there. Yeah, and that piece, this, you can't see it, it's on the floor. This gets opened up, and I'll iron this down, and then stitch this part down. And then you have a strong seam. And on the outside, looks like this. This gets opened up. You'll just see a few angled, well, spaced, and then you have a strong stitches holding this part down outside. And you have a nice strong seam here. You'll just see, and then this goes onto the back of the tent. So, spaced. What we have to do now is holding this part down outside. And you have a nice, ensure that I attach this to the right part. Here we go. So, this is the outer edge. This goes to the bottom. This is, I have it marked. You can also tell because this doesn't have a selvage. This is the center. And so I attach my next piece to this. This is, if you're making one of these, this is definitely a place where you want to measure twice, cut once. On at least one of the tents I made two left side doors, which meant I had to tear them apart and rebuild them. I don't like doing that. So it's a lot of work to start over and rebuild. So tear them apart and rebuild them. I don't like doing that. So it's a lot of work. I am going to get a cup of coffee and I'll. Man, it's colder than Locust Grove's disdain. Oh goodness. Locust Grove. No Rip. News. Anything interesting here? Oh, that is cool. Oh goodness. Neat. Oh man. So much cool old-fashioned stuff being made right now. Interesting here. All around the country. Oh, that is cool. Probably all around the world. Nobody knows. So much cool old-fashioned stuff being made right now. Things all around the country. So one thing that you might not know if you're not involved in it. So much cool. All over the place right now. I just scrolled through my Facebook. One thing that I try to keep it restricted. It's got a handful of family and mostly friends who are into living history. Every day, even now at 11:30, 2 p.m. on a cold Sunday night, living history. There are people making 18th century, 19th century hats and dresses and tents and all kinds of cool antique stuff being made. Hey sweetheart, there are people making, are you ready? We're gonna sew this next panel. That's kind of neat. I like it. All kinds of cool. Lose the reading glasses. What we need is to attach, this piece here goes to the, that's kind of neat. I like it. All kinds of lose the reading glasses. This is the center panel to attach. Right here goes to the, hopefully I marked my canvas. This is the center panel. So that's bell, right? Right. Oh, this should be bell center, right? Bell center. So this is the center panel. So this other piece, the selvage, is attached. Oh, this one is attached here. I don't know if you can see that. This is just my camera. So this other piece. I might need a dual monitor here. So this piece gets attached to here. This one is attached here. Well, you can see that. And that gets attached to here. A dual monitor here. So this piece gets attached to here. Carefully lay this out. And that gets attached to here. This piece carefully lay this out. How do we do it? Let's see. This is definitely a place to measure twice and cut once, to pay close attention to how it goes together. You don't want to have to redo this. This is definitely a place to measure twice and cut once. It ought to be just like this. How it goes together. You don't want to have to redo. So I have my reference marks. This is definitely. I don't know if you can see these chalk lines, but when I lay out my templates, and you can do it by measurement. I made the first tent just by measuring, and then I made it. I should talk about that a bit. When I made my first tent, when I lay out my templates, when I made my first tent, I made it in about some. When I made my first tent, they weren't quite bed sheets, but it was close to bed sheets at a thrift store for just a few dollars.
then made the pieces in that, and then adjusted the shape and the measurements of those. I set up tent poles and staked them down to the ground outside, and then made sure it worked. And then I used that to cut the shape and very expensive linen. I set up tent poles and staked them down to the ground, and that worked out really well. Made sure it worked. One of the things I did after that then was make paper patterns. I used heavy craft paper, and over the years, then I switched. I took those patterns, I refined them. Every time I made a tent, I altered it a bit. I need a little bit slightly different angle or a little bit more length, so it's less width. Patterns are different shape to the curve. I altered it a bit. I need a little bit and then eventually I took 1/8 inch masonite and made patterns of that, and that's worked really well. Eventually I took, I don't remember the point of mentioning that, but made patterns. I'm sure there is somewhere really well. Oh, here it is. One of the things that is helpful for is marking the size of the pieces that you cut. So I have chalk marks that I place at various points as reference, so that I know that the size of the pieces. I have a series of triangles, chalk marks that I place at various points. There's a slight curve to some of these lines. If I line these up properly, I have a series of triangles. The whole shape is symmetrical and fits well and makes a good tent. If they're not, it doesn't. So these reference points are very important. The whole shape I have here fits well and makes a good tent. This is the bell part that I just sewed. This is the outer portion. It has a selvage. The center does not. This is the only piece in the entire tent that has no selvage on it. What I've done is laid it out so that each seam has a selvage. This is the only piece in the entire tent that has no selvage on it. Now in the period, if you're sewing with actual stuff that was woven in the 18th century, it was 27 to 28 inches wide. Now in the period, if both edges would have a selvage, and then you have strong seams all the way down. That's my assumption. I don't know for a fact. That's my guess. So what I want to do is I want to attach this piece. This is the other outer piece, and I want this to mirror this side. And so I have selvage. I have the center piece, and I want to just mirror it. So I want to take this piece, line it up on here, and then I want these chalk marks that show, here's the top of my pattern. So I want to take this piece to line up right on that in the same place. That show, here's the top of my pattern. And here we go. I need my reading glasses for this because I have grown old in the service of tent making. I need my reading glasses for this because somebody had to get that reference. And grown old in the service of tent making. Tip of the hat to you. Another way to double check that is to check this width, because these ought to be the same. And I happen to know they are because I double checked them before. Let's check this width. So here we go. So I'm looking for a very similar width that lines up in the same place, right? Here's my chalk line and the same width from selvage to cut edge. There we go. That's that. Now this piece should go right in the same width from selvage to cut edge. There we go. That's that. This piece goes, this, I don't want to, should go right in. Let's see. Unhelpfully, I have two marks on it. I think. This is where I say, and I do this on every project. Gee, I hope this works. I have two marks on it. I think. And it does. This is where I say, and I do this one every project. Line this up. Yeah, I hope this works. It's my upper line. Excuse me. And it does. Line this up. Yeah, I hope so. My upper line is the one I want to match. Now, what I want to do is I want to mirror that
piece. So this goes, so my upper line is the one I want to untwist that piece. So this goes, so my upper line is the one I want to untwist that piece. So this goes, the upper line is right there. So there's that. Then,
And it is worth taking an extra 10 minutes or so to figure this out.
to look at it a couple of times, to do it, I have at least once incorrectly sewn a tent. I made a regimental coat one time with 2 left sleeves. I made a tent with 2 left or right doors, I don't remember which it was, but it was one of those was wrong. With 2 left sleeves. Doing 8 feet of stitches and then ripping them out is this is a strong lesson in measuring twice and cutting once, and the value of taking your time to just double check it. And if you have to spend 10 or 20 minutes, it's a strong lesson in looking silly, as I'm sure I do. It is well worth the effort. Just double check it. And if you have to spend 10 or 20 minutes, so we have our top line. Looking silly. And again, it's a very faint chalk line, but I can see it in this, at this angle and in this light. So line it up. So we have a top line, looking silly. And again, it's a very faint chalk line, but does this match? Does it mirror? Yeah. So there we go. So now, what I want to do, I want to hold this, I'm going to align this at the proper height. Put it on that line. There we go. So now I don't like. Hold this. Here's the thing. I don't like doing it this direction. I prefer to hold the selvage away from me. Just. I don't like. It doesn't actually matter. Here's if I do it that direction. What I'm going to do is sew the other direction, because what's really critical is this top. The base of it has a little more flexibility and leeway. You know, this is mainly for those of you who may be doing a tent like this. The base of it, you want to sew one, this is just something I've learned from experience. Excuse me, sweetheart. Mainly for those of you who may be like this doing a tent. Falling over that corner. You want to sew one, this is just something I've learned from experience. What's really important is this stuff, you're not working on steel or something relatively inflexible. Stuff stretches, really important, contracts, bunches, this stuff. And what's really important is to maintain these angles. So line these angles up here. On the last one, I have the selvage facing away from me, and I've done that on a number of these seams, and I just prefer that. In this case, I'm going to hold it toward me. Really what I'm doing is I'm following the line between the main fabric and the selvage, which is distinctively lighter material here. What I really want is for this top angle to be right. If this is right and it stays right all the way down, as the other one was done. If you sew one from the top, do the other one that way, because it will stretch. I've done the bodies of tents before, and I learned after the first one, if you do it that way, it always kind of works consistently, and you wind up with a fairly even thing. If you don't do it that way, you encounter differing lengths, different angles, which are not good. You want it symmetrical. You should be able to set this tent up, look at it dead on, and draw a line down the center, and that is perpendicular to the earth, and equal angles on either side. Set this tent up, handmade, so there is some flexibility. Again, if you take the effort to do this at this stage, you get closer to perfection. You are not going to get perfection. You're going to get close or far. And I prefer close. Close to perfection.
piece of twine. I threw the old piece out because it had been abraded by sewing that little seam, or the, a couple of feet anyway. And what I want is through the old consistency here, just because it had been abraded, especially up at the top. It takes a lot of strain, and if it's nice and solid, it will last for a very long time. It will give it more strength, and it takes a lot of strain, and it'll look nicer. If it's nice and solid, here we go. I usually just pass over this, 3 times or so. It's not putting a ton of wax on here. This is an ancient cake of beeswax. It's not putting a ton of wax on here. This is just if you do this during the summer, it's beeswax. It's about 20 degrees outside now. It's considerably warmer than that in here, but it's not quite sewing outdoors in the summer. During the summer, so it is 20 degrees outside now. It's stiff and brittle. Considerably warmer than that in here, but got our wax. It's not twine. Sewing outdoors. My blunt needle. I like to pinch this, run it through my gigantic teeth, and flatten just the very end of it. You're not going to be able to see that on the camera. Pinch this, but you can run it through flatten that end, gigantic down here. And I usually leave a bit down here is the very end of it. What we want is pass this through. You just double check now, or triple, quadruple check. So I'm going to line these angles up, and that's right. So I'm going to put my first stitches in and lock this into position here, and that's right. So what does that get me? Let's see, I missed it. First stitches in and lock this. There we go. Okay, so first stitch. I'm just going to put a little knot in here just so I don't pull through when I'm so enthusiastic about starting this because it's such an exciting so first stitch. I'm just going to put a little knot in here just off of the space shuttle. Right? So enthusiastic about starting the moment of creation. All right. I'm going to put a few stitches in it, and then I'm going to double check. I'm not only looking to see that they're consistent and even, but I really am looking to make sure that they are aligned. It's much easier to pull, not only looking to see a dozen stitches with the seam ripper, really pull that thread out and re-sew it, than it is to get halfway down and discover that you're misaligned. If you get the alignment right, again, like with anything on this, if you get all the alignments right, it goes together just very simply. It's just a lot of, most of the effort is in keeping it consistent as you go. If you do that, you wind up with a nice tent. If you don't, it's just a lot of, you might, most of the effort is in, I prefer to be virtually certain. If you do that, you wind up. So I've got a few stitches in. You might, and now look at my alignment, it's dead on. We are ready to carry on. I've got a few stitches in. Right. So this will be the outside of the tent. When it's complete, it'll be folded out like this. This gets tucked in, the body of the tent goes there, and then down this way. So this will be the outside of the tent. So here we go. When it's complete, it'll be folded out like this. This gets tucked in, the body of the tent goes there, and then down this way. So this will be the outside of the tent. So here we go. When it's complete, it'll be folded out like this. Most of this explication is for people who are intending to, well, and part of it, honestly, is for myself. Just there's something about explaining things to someone else that helps me learn them even better. Well, and part of this is to help other people who are interested in something about explaining things to someone else. Whether it's Revolutionary War or otherwise, you could make these your own design if you want. I know there's a guy in the Czech Republic, I think a Polish guy who made linen tents by hand. I think theirs are Roman and Viking era, maybe some medieval ones. Made linen tents by hand. I think theirs are Roman and Viking. Trying to pass on and preserve what I know, what I've learned over experience. I've made more than half a dozen of these things for friends, for myself, and
trying to pass on and preserve what I know, what I've learned. It's just kind of a cool thing, and there aren't a whole lot of people doing this. So, I like, when I was a kid, I had the Foxfire books, and they were sort of famous for preserving old traditions, blacksmithing and black powder, all kinds of stuff that was in danger, knowledge that was in danger of being lost, just because it's not strictly necessary for all kinds of stuff that was in danger of actually living. We're in a period of history right now where most people actually live. Basic needs are fairly easily met right now, where that may not, in fact, that will not always be the case. Basic needs may not be in our lifetimes or even in the next century, but there will be a time when almost everything that people talk about today as new technological wonder is lost forever. There will be a time. I suspect most of the digital art, and I make digital art, worked professionally as an artist for 30 years, is lost. Most of the stuff that people are creating today is going to be, what was it, Roy Batty said at the end of Blade Runner, something like, most of the stuff, people like tears in the rain, is all going to be washed away. What was it, Roy Batty? Anything that really survives, we don't have much papyrus from ancient Egypt. We have a lot of stone tablets. We've got baked clay cuneiform tablets from much papyrus from ancient Egypt. What's now Iraq. That survives. Clay cuneiform tablets. Carved stone from Rome and Greece, from southern Iraq periods. We do not have a lot of stuff on paper. We don't have a lot of stuff on impermanent media. So it's important to preserve physical stuff wherever we can on impermanent media. So these videos are going to vanish, but it's important to preserve physical. Maybe the tents I make, the paintings I make, maybe somebody will see one of my videos and learn how to do some of these things, or maybe they already know how to do it. Maybe the tents I make, the paintings I make, something useful that they can do more of it. Maybe they already know what we're doing in such a way that they last longer. We'll have some things that survive from our time. Do more of it. But one day, a lot of what we consider our sophisticated modern civilization will be dust. One day, a lot of dust and bones. What we consider our sophisticated modern civilization will be dust. Nope. Now I just created a knot here, and I do not want that. This longer. There we go. Okay, so I've got just under a foot of stitching. It's fairly consistent, even spacing, roughly the same length. Okay, so I've got it's starting to create a foot of stitching. And you can just tell by looking at it. That's a symmetrical triangle. Roughly draw a center line down that to the base of the tent. If this extends, if I can maintain this, I'll have a consistent back, and that's really what you want. You do not want this to be lopsided. Suppose I could stop talking about this technical stuff and start singing Leonard Skinner or Guns N' Roses or sea shanties or something. Maybe I ought to. Suppose I could stop talking about this technical stuff. My channel's not monetized, so I can't do shots for super chats or that sort of thing. But I suppose I could offer. My channel's not monetized, so I can't do a cappella versions of great songs for subscriptions or likes or comments or something to grow the channel. It's my goal for the year is to get the channel to 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time, so I can monetize it. It's my goal for the year is if you're watching the channel anytime, if you find any of this useful or amusing, please hit the like, hit the subscribe, make a comment. It doesn't cost a cent to subscribe, but it does help YouTube decide to recommend this channel and this video to other people who have similar interests. And so maybe you won't ever make attention, but somebody who might want to will be inspired by your contribution. And that's just pressing that button. You won't ever make attention. Thank you in advance. I know some of you are doing that. We've gained a number of subscribers this month. And I expect I'll continue to. And I thank all of you. Some of you are doing that. We've gained a number of subscribers this month. So anyway, all right, so now we've got past the hard part. The hard part is getting it aligned, getting it lined this direction, getting it not bunched up, not too tight, just laying flat, just almost as one heavy piece of linen. It's two pieces still, except in this section. And then getting a consistent stitch along. Once you do that, the hard part's over. So now it's just a matter of reproducing that all the way down, consistent. So here we go. So now you can get into the rhythm of it. And when you get into the rhythm, the needle goes through just like fairly consistent and quick. Now you can get into the rhythm. Now and then it sticks, or you have to untangle it, twine or whatever. Needle goes through. It's not too bad. Fairly consistent and quick. Now you can get into the rhythm. Now and then it sticks. Once you establish that rhythm, it's just mechanical reproduction. Yeah. So that's going to be nice. Having made a few of these, this looks right. Mechanical reproduction. That's going to be nice.
Little cat go.
Having made a few of these, this looks
I'm
right.
gonna take a moment and find her, just be sure she's. Where'd you go, little one?
Oh, there we go. She had a big day chasing her. Bits of twine around. She had a big day running around on scraps of linen. Chasing her. She seems to be ready for a nap. Bits of twine around. She had a big day running around on scraps of linen. Chasing her. She seems to be ready for a nap. I think I mentioned it the other day in the stream. I'd like to get another microphone here and just put it on the, put it up close here. Just,
I'm pretty sure that it's not being picked up by this.
microphone. Just the sound of this linen as the thread goes through and comes out, goes through and comes out.
Pretty sure that it's not
Kind of
being
cool,
picked up by this.
cool music that this has going on. As the thread goes through and comes out. And in fact, that's one of the ways you can tell that it's going well. The music is consistent. In fact, that's one of the ways you can tell that it's going well. It's about the same note, the music, the speed, same tempo. In fact, that's one of the ways you can tell. Again, if you're just tuning in, it's about the same note. I like to pull the seam through my thumb and forefinger tightly, just kind of even out those stitches as I go. Every couple of feet, pull the seam through from the forefinger. Just helps to even the strength of it. Even out those stitches as I go. Needle, every couple of feet, pull. There we go. From the forefinger. Just helps to even the strength of it. Even out those stitches as I go. Needle, every couple of feet, pull. There we go. Even the strength of it. Even out those stitches.
just refreshing this to see if anybody has responded to my post. And it doesn't look like it. I've had 6 people in here looking, so just encouraging. Somebody's taking a look, and they know that it's possible to learn something or other about linen tent construction, which is encouraging. Somebody's taking a look, and they know that it's possible to learn something or other about linen tent construction.
Maybe we will all need to live in linen tents at some point. Who knows? Although, I don't know. They know where they live. I don't think I've ever seen, apart from historical sites, I don't think I've ever seen a field of flax. I know it's produced in China and Romania, and I've never seen, apart from historical sites, I don't think I've ever seen maybe a field Ukraine, of flax. I suppose a lot of places overseas, China, where, I mean, I've seen it growing here in the United States, in the Midwest, but just historical sites, not as a commercial farming. I don't know, but just, I don't have flax seeds. I think I probably ought to get some. I'd like to grow some. I've seen it processed, again, historic sites. I don't have flax seeds. I'd like to grow some. I have a couple of gardens out here. We grow vegetables and herbs and things. Sage, rosemary, and thyme, all that stuff. I like that. I grow vegetables. I like potatoes and corn and beans, squash, stuff like that. But it might be nice to put in a little plot of flax and make some linen. Every once in a while, we'll be out somewhere and might be nice to in an old barn behind an antique shop. Find an old loom. I think it would be really kind of neat to grow some flax, red it, rot it, and find an old loom, beat it, comb it, spin it, weave it, and then sew something cool out of it. I'd like to try that sometime. Never done it, but that's never stopped us from trying these things and sew something cool out of it. I might do that this year. Hadn't really thought of it until just now. Never done it, but I think I'd like to get some flax seeds and try my hand at it. I had good luck with potatoes the first time I tried them. I grew indigo when I was a teenager. I got some seeds at St. Augustine and took them home and stuck them in the ground and they grew. And got a nice bush of indigo. I wish I'd saved some of those things. I can get some more. Took them home and stuck them in the ground. Grew sugar cane. Nice bush of indigo. Get some more. So how hard to flax be? I don't know. Sugar cane. I'll have to see about getting some seeds. I'm sure you could buy them, maybe online. So how hard to flax? Heck, maybe I know somebody who's got some. See about getting some seeds. But I've never seen it growing here. Like, I've never seen a field of flax. I've seen gardens of it. I know somebody who's got small amounts, but never enough to. But I've never seen it grow. I've never seen a field of flax. I've seen gardens of it. I know somebody who's got small amounts. Never enough to. It used to be a pretty important domestic manufacturer too. One of them. Gotta grow the material. Pretty important domestic manufacturer. I wonder about industrial hemp production. I don't know. I've never seen a field of that either. I think I saw a photograph of one like in Iowa or somewhere out in the Midwest. Okay, they call that the Midwest. I saw a photograph of a little further east somewhere out in the generally Midwest. Okay, they call that the Midwest. I saw a photograph of a little further east somewhere out in the generally West. Okay, they call that. All right, so we've got a few feet done now, and cruising right along. As soon as this seam is done, then I can iron these down. So we just open these seams up and it just keeps them, it's just a little easier to do. Cruising right along. Tidy job on it. Felling it down. Once that's done, then this back, or the bell, as it's called, is ready to attach to the body of the tent. Before I do that though, I want to get the doors completed bell. I still have to hem the door openings vertically. Before I do that, though, I want to open the door of the tent. And then I connect those two doors, and then they get sewn into the body of the tent. But I like to get those assemblies done, and then I have, like I said before, I have my tent, my oldest tent here. I'll lay it out on the floor. That's why I use this room, because it's a nice big open floor. So I'll lay that out so I can lay my new panels on top of my old tent. Just make sure the angles are roughly correct and the size is about right. Gives me a chance to inspect new panels on top of my old tent. And I'll lay those out, make sure the angles are roughly correct. If they check out, they get sewn into the body of the tent. If they don't check out, then I make whatever corrections I have to.
I'll lay those out, make sure.
And then if they check out, go on and put them together. Cruising right along, this tent will be done this week, in just a few days. Pretty pleased about that. It's gone nicely, it's been fun. Enjoy it. Kind of nice to make stuff by hand. I don't know what it is about making stuff by hand. I've always enjoyed it. Make stuff like taking a raw. I don't know if linen twine is really considered a raw material. You take this material and you transform it in some way, and then put it together in another way, and you have a completely different thing made of that stuff. It's got a totally different use. Like a tent is a different thing than a bolt of linen. In some ways, it's restricted more. The bolt of linen has potential energy, and the tent itself is a specific kind of energy. In some ways, it's restricted more. It's a tent. Bolt of linen has, or as one of my friends uses it, it's a beer cooler cover. It's a tent. He likes it for that. Or as one of my friends uses it, and it's a beer cooler cover. Here we got just a few more inches of twine in this needle full. So as soon as I get to the end of this, I'll put a new piece of wax twine on to carry on. Probably need at least one or two more. Well, definitely at least one more beyond that. Maybe 1.5, something like that. It's not a whole lot of carry on to do this. Probably need at least one. Just want to use just enough when I thread it on there. I let, so at the outset you're just fully extending the arm and then coming back in. Any more than that, if you have to pull it a couple of times, it's a little too long. So it's better to just keep it in the fluid motion. Fully extending the arm and then coming back in. Why is that? Any more than that, if you have to pull it a couple of times, it's a little too long. Well, it's tiring to do more than that, but it's also, as you're pulling the thread through, you get a feel for the pressure that you're applying to it. Hit it with my little finger here, and I know just about, I can measure the force that I need to pull it to it. I don't want it too tight, I want it to remain loose. I want this to be a secure join on these two pieces of fabric. And you get a sense of it after you do it a few thousand times. Secure join on these two pieces of fabric. And you get a sense of it after you do it. Somebody I respect tremendously told me, I was asking about some aspect of sewing, and he said only the first 10,000 are hard. Respect tremendously. Thought about that a lot over the years. I was asking about some aspect. He's really right. Sewing it, you do anything 10,000 times, and you'll get a sense of it if you're working to. So if you're paying attention to it, right. Trying to be consistent and to improve as you go. You do something 10,000 times, or you do something 100,000 times, you'll get a feel for it. And trying to be consistent and to improve. You're not paying too close attention to it, you'll get really good at it. All right, so we are now on to a new piece of twine. Not paying too close attention for this thrilling Sunday night live stream, making a Revolutionary War tent.
New piece of twine for this thrilling Sunday night live stream
During the storm of the century across the United States.
Well,
I don't know what it's like down south. It's probably nice and warm.
thrilling Sunday night live stream during the
Here in the Midwest. And, I know further west of here it's miserable.
like down
I
south.
think it's probably nice and warm. Saw somebody on Twitter talking about their farm was, he said, something like 20 below. 0 Fahrenheit, which is
Saw somebody on
too cold for my taste. Farm was about 20 here, I think, and 20 below. 0. I've been out in 20-degree weather. I've been in colder weather. Too cold for my taste. Anything below 20 hurts. Here, I think. Maybe I just wasn't dressed for it. But I've been out in 20-degree weather. Spent some time in cold weather outside. Below 20, it hurts below 20. Above that, you can function as long as you stay moving, you're working or something. That's the way. So I want to go through this direction. Go from the back toward the front. You can function as long as you stay moving. Leave that tail there, tie that, and then there's something. And you get down into get below 20. It's dangerous. Dangerous cold. Just hope that everyone's all right. I was reading about power outages. I know they had some bad ones in Texas. Last year, all the wind turbines froze. I think that's going on in Canada right now. Power outages. They just wanted to switch to green energy, and all the wind turbines froze. Left themselves exposed to single sources. So when those sources inevitably fail, as any single source goes, people die. Single source. Criminally unfortunate. It's not actually criminal. People responsible. People die. Pay no legal price for it. But criminally unfortunate. It's not actually criminal. Well, it's foreseeable. It is historically proven, and it is predictable. But such is the way the world goes. Well, it's foreseeable. It is historically proven. And there's money or political advantage to be gained. People will do demonstrably stupid anti-human things. People will do. I just hope that every demonstrably ill effects are some inconvenience. Nothing more serious than that. I just hope that every demonstrably. There's a bit of a ill effects are some inconvenience. Nothing more serious than that. So let's drag this seam a bit. Just see if we can straighten it out. We're not straighten out this smoother. Evenly distributing the force of these stitches. I don't have any evidence that actually works, except it feels like it does. Distributing, and I think the final results indicate that it does have some benefit. I don't have any evidence that actually works, except. All right, so now. I think the final results indicate that it does have some benefit. This is kind of important. These pieces are not cut perfectly straight on purpose. They are a very slight curve to take up some of the, just to account for the shape of the tent. I think in my compilation video, where I go back through this and show, just to account for the shape of the tent. I'll show the reference materials, but I think in my compilation. Well, the thumbnail for this video, you can see some reproduction tents. I'll show the reference materials. Gravity doesn't keep these sides in a straight line. Any line stretched between 2 points is gravity going to have a slump, a curve, an arc to it. Any line stretched. And the linen definitely does. And so, going to have cut over the years. I've cut my templates to reflect that. The linen definitely does. And then you don't have a bunch of excess fabric there. It just follows the curve. It's very slight, so it's not a great alteration, but it makes the template a bunch of excess fabric there. It just follows the curve. I don't see why. I don't have any evidence for it having been used in the period. They may have, for all I know, just sewn them straight, or cut straight, geometrically straight panels.
I don't have any evidence.
I suspect
They may have,
that any tent maker is doing dozens or hundreds of these things is going to have some sort of an easy reproducible method for producing these. It might have just been by eye, I don't know. One of the things that I'd like to have more information on, I don't know that it exists. I suppose if I could find a diary of a tent maker from 1778, something like that, or a manual that he wrote for himself or his employees and saying, okay, step one, here's what we do. Short of that, it's kind of, part of the reason I do this sort of thing is to, okay, step one, here's what we find out, okay, what was step one? How did we do that? How do you wind up with, these things that we see in paintings and people talk about their tents, what was step one? Having portraits and the background, and you have them engraved in paintings of camps, descriptions of them in different places, but nowhere is there the guide to making them, except where, sort of what kind of artifact it is, where it survives, and you can examine it and get some indication. The guide to making them. Beyond that, you just have to kind of make stuff and see, well, okay, well, this works, this doesn't work, that works, that doesn't work. And you piece together what's most likely based on all the other evidence. Make stuff and see, well, okay, well, this works, this doesn't work, that works, that doesn't work. So, piece together what's most likely based on all the other evidence. Periodically, I'll scrape my fingers across this just to kind of even these out. I want them, it's important that they lie flat and that there is not a, periodically, a difference in the tension on them when you're sewing it together. You want it to be lie flat and that there is not just to present the end as a continuous structure with tension when you're sewing it together. That's what I try to do as I go. And as you go, continuous, anything to correct at the moment. Or rebuild, God forbid, knock wood. As you go, continuous, anything to correct at the moment. Or rebuild, God forbid, knock wood. So you go in, you make a stitch, go in, skip a space, and create another stitch, and you go backwards. That's your space backstitch, or a backstitch really, without skipping a space. Backstitch, you just go, you make a stitch and you go forward, one stitch, length underneath, and then come back into, or very next to the previous stitch end. In this case, I'm skipping one. I found that was best on these, and I believe that that's how you probably made. In this case, it's something very close to it. And it works. Tent holds up. That one's held up for close to 15 years, I think. Got another one that I made in the thinner material, very similar construction. That one was slightly refined. I made the lighter one second. I made the heavy linen. It was very similar to this material, almost indistinguishable from it. Similar construction. And then I made one because I was reading these accounts of the Osnabrück's tent. Osnabrück is a city in Germany. I guess they were famous for linen manufacturing. It was a thinner, sort of coarse, cheap, relatively cheap linen. But I know that was also used for tent making. So I wanted to be able to compare them, so I made one of those. And I know that was also used. Has some different qualities when you use it, but it's virtually the same. It's just not as sturdy. It's a little more comfortable in hot weather. Say that. A little bit breezy. It's virtually the same. Although, if I'm going to be in a thunderstorm or extreme wind or cold weather, I think I prefer this heavier duck thunderstorm. Duck, Russia sheeting. Cold weather. I think I prefer the names that these heavier linens go by. slightly different. Names that he said he goes by. All slightly different. I am a sewing machine of sorts. I am a sewing machine of sorts. I am a sewing machine. I thought maybe the little kitten would be entertaining you all while I sew, but she is fast asleep over there in another chair. She had a busy day. I thought maybe the little kitten was chasing her tail, and she was climbing all over the furniture, and she was running around over there in another chair, exploring. She had a busy day. I thought maybe the little kitten was chasing her tail, climbing all over, tired herself out. She's gonna leave me up in exploring. Short time, it's hard to tell. I'm just glad she's here. I'm glad she's happy. She certainly would have frozen to death had she not come inside. The past few days, I'm glad she was here. This weather is bitterly cold outside. She certainly would have frozen to death. Not bad to hear, but man, it's nasty out there. It's just a very light dusting of snow today. Almost nothing to speak of. Bad to hear, but it was there. Very light dusting of snow today. Almost nothing to speak of, but the cold air would certainly have killed her. Wherever she came from, however she got here, I think that almost providential for her. Cold air would certainly have killed her. Sometimes I'll vary the direction that my stroke goes, just still want to maintain the same effect at the end, same pressure, but gives your muscles a bit of relief and a slightly different workout. Still want to maintain. All right, let's take a look at this. Store the needle there. What do we have so far? We got, all right, about maybe 2.5, almost 3 feet. Left to do on this seam, and then once when this complete also, then the bell is ready to be ironed and felled. All right? So that's what we have. That's what we're looking at now, and it looks pretty neat, right? That's kind of cool. I love it when it starts getting to this stage. I mean, there's so much prep to do. Getting panels to the right width, and getting them trimmed down, and threads pulled, and getting it all up. Pretty correct widths, and start stitching. You cut the panels out, you start stitching together and stuff. Once it starts getting into these assemblies, then you can really start seeing some fruits of your labor. It's kind of gratifying. So I need to stretch my legs and refill my coffee, so I shall return in just a short period of time. And I hope you'll be able to amuse yourselves. I'll see you very shortly. And I thank you for joining me here. Hey there. Hello. All right, back to it. Carrying on the stitching, we are connecting the back of the bell, the back of the tent.
All right, let's get rolling. So,
This should be turned off. Otherwise we get weird feedback. Glad you're here, whoever you are. Making a Revolutionary War tent out of linen and strong coffee. And perseverance. Been at it for a couple of hours. Well, 3 hours now. Many hours involved. Many linen involved. Beeswax. Linen twine. Knowledge. History. After a while, I get space madness and start.
All right, let's get rolling.
You've lucked into this part of
Hey there.
the show.
Hello. All right, back to it. Carrying on the stitching, we are connecting the back of the bell, the back of the tent.
Glad you're here. Got any questions? Throw them in the chat. Otherwise, we get weird.
don't have any questions, don't. Glad you're here, whoever you are. So I get more views, it seems, when I'm not here. So maybe I'll just turn the camera on the empty linen and let it run for a few hours. Perseverance. See what happens. I might try that for a couple of hours. Just try an empty stream. Here's a picture of my lamp. Live streaming a lamp.
Many hours involved.
Live stream my kitten.
Linen involved.
I don't know.
Beeswax.
But I'd be happy to chat with somebody. Like all the YouTube channels that I watch, my stream is not nearly as much fun as the ones I watch.
You lucked
Well,
into.
I think it's fun because at the end of it I have a tent.
Hello.
But
Alright, back to it. Carrying on the
I
stitching.
don't know what to say.
Connecting the back.
When I come in, there's somebody watching, and I start talking, they leave. My thought is, well, maybe I ought to talk, but I don't know what else to do. Questions, don't.
Glad you're here.
That's just how I roll here. So what you see is what you get. So I get more views, it seems, when I'm not here. So maybe I'll just. I must amuse myself. Let it run for a few, hopefully inform you. See what happens. And educate, and entertain. Just try an empty stream. Here's a picture of my lamp. I'm just going to start offering, I can't take super chats or any of the traditional ways of getting interaction with happy to subscribers. I do want to add subscribers. Chat with somebody. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking requests for a cappella renditions of Leonard Skinner and sea shanties and Guns N' Roses songs. At the end of it, I have a tent. I'm a terrible singer, but I'm enthusiastic. But I lack in talent. I make up for. Come in, there's somebody watching, and I start talking, they leave. Anyway, we're coming down to the wire here. I've got about another foot, about a foot and a half, really just a foot, and then I'm beyond the section that I need to do. My stitching is intense. I like to check it as I go. I must amuse myself. And drag it between my thumb and forefinger just to even out the stitches, pressure on the linen. Here's what we're doing. We're connecting all these pieces. This is the back of the tent. And I'm almost ready to connect a new piece of twine to this and then do this last little direction. I'm going to continue for another few inches. Add another bit of twine. I think what I'm going to do is it's important to keep this flat, no buckles, no bumps, no unnecessary tension. I just want it to lie flat on the other piece of linen. Terrible singer, but I'm enthusiastic. If you do that right, it all just kind of comes together nicely. And there we go. That's the signal for the next piece of twine. Anyway, we're coming down to the wire here. So here we go. Let's add about a foot and a half. Really, give me another piece of twine. Cut it. We'll go. My stitching is. I am starting to get some feedback from viewers. People drop in, drop out. It seems pressure when I do what I think I ought to do. Like my. Here's what we're doing. We're connecting all these pieces. This is the back of the tent. And I'm almost ready to connect a new piece. Put on this YouTube thing. People roll out. When I just kind of carry on as I naturally do. They stick around. So I think henceforth, I'm not doing any more unnecessary attention. What I think ought to be done, bullshit. I'm just gonna sew my tent, rant and rave, rant and roar, ramble. There we go. On. That's the signal for the piece of twine. Glad you're here, or not. So here we go. You want to be here? Be here. If you don't, buzz off. Piece of twine. Cut it. There we go. My goal is 1,000 subscribers by this time next year. I am starting to get some feedback from. I think to do that, drop in, drop out. I need to. It seems pressure over here. I think I ought to do. I think to do that, I need to. Do a combination live streams as I'm doing. Shorts as I'm doing. My shorts have been moderately successful. And short form videos. I think henceforth,
a mix of those regularly uploaded, and they're all fairly
What I
consistent in
think
their
ought to be done, bullshit.
topics and production value,
So my tent,
which isn't
rant,
terrible.
rant and roar.
I think that ought to carry me to my goal.
Glad you're here.
So,
Or not.
here we go.
You wanna be here?
Here, refresh this just to see. I don't think this stuff refreshes as often as it ought to. Here we go. Man, they had 12 views. I mean, that's 12 people have showed up. This stuff refreshes. Nobody's made a mention of it. No comments, no subscriptions, as I can. Yeah, 42. That's got 42 subscribers.
I am grateful for every one
Nobody's
of
made
them.
a mention of it. No comments, no subscriptions, as I can.
I hope that I can make
Yeah, 42
content that
subscribers.
is useful to you.
Grateful for every one of you.
I think it's useful. And part of this is in case I get struck by lightning, hit by a fallen piece of timber, freeze to death, have a massive heart attack, some other unforeseeable catastrophe that ends my life, freeze to death. I hope that some of the things that I record here on this channel will be preserved for others to learn from. I have a mix here of, I'm an artist, I live in an old farmhouse. We bought this place a number of years ago. After a number of years of working on it, we almost have it up to run down. And so I hope to record some of this stuff that I've learned through hard lessons. Well, some hard lessons, some have gone easy. Maybe somebody can benefit from what we've learned along the way. At the moment, though, I am recreating a bit of American history, and really not just American history, but French, Spanish, and British. I am recreating a bit of American history, and really any of the armies involved in the American Revolution. I'm making a tent. And this is how tents were made, at least since Roman times. American Revolution, Vikings, making a tent all around the world. Lots of people used linen. Lots of people used linen to make tents. And that's what I'm doing today, so I'm carrying on a tradition that is at least 3,800 years old. Maybe older. Probably older. Tradition that is at least 3,800 years old. The period I'm interested in is the 1770s. And so I am making a tent is likely to be very similar to the ones used during the American Revolution in America by the Americans and the British. Likely to be very similar. Have not looked to the ones used during the American Revolution. I probably ought to start digging in and see what I can find. The French were good records keepers, and I think maybe there's a good chance that some digging in and see Frenchmen recorded how to make a tent, and I should look that up. I'm going to do that. Frenchman recorded. Anyway, doing a space back stitch on this seam, I connected the other panel. This is the back of the tent. It's called the bell. It resembles a bell in profile. Anyway, doing a space back stitch on this seam, I connected the other panel. This is the back of the tent. 3 pieces of linen connected together. I use a space back stitch, and I sew on the edge of the selvage, and then I whip fell the selvage down to the body of the bell. Once that is done, I then connect that bell to the body of the tent, and you have the back half of the tent done. Once that is done, you don't have connect that bell to the body of the tent. We do the same thing with the front of the tent. I've got 2 doors built. Now I need to hem the door openings. And I will connect them. Do the same thing with assembly, kind of like this. I'll show this in just a moment. Now I need to hem the door open. Connect them together, and that assembly goes into the front of the tent. This part goes into the back of the tent. And then it's just a matter of hemming it down, putting the grommets in, getting it all fit properly to sit nice on the poles. Then you got a good tent. Just a matter of hemming it down. Not a whole lot to it. I mean, there is a whole lot to it, but to sit nice on the poles. In reality, it's fairly simple. Not a whole lot to it. Not a very complicated thing to it. It seems complicated if you've never done it. And that's part of the reason we're doing this series of videos. want to record what I know about it. Seems complicated. Showing every stitch, every cut, every moment of scratching my chin and wondering what to do, how to correct the problem. Showing every stitch, every part of that is to show how I solve problems. Part of it is just because it's part of the process. There's a lot of head scratching that goes on. Part of that is to show. Nobody ever shows that in instructional videos. It's part of the process. But that's the stuff that's really valuable. And anybody can be trained to show that. Just do this stitch 1,400 times on this seam. That's the stuff that's really valuable. Anybody can be trained to show. Very seldom do you see, hey, we've run into this problem. How do we solve it? I had that a few days ago when I was laying out the panels. Very seldom do you see. It took me twice as long as it ought to just cut the pieces. Okay, so I've come down. Here's my mark. This is going to be the roughly where the end of the tent is. This is going to be the hem. Actually, about here up is going to be. This stuff is extra. I'm just going to go ahead and stitch this here because I'm probably going to have to pull, actually cut and remove several inches of these stitches. I'll leave this here for now, but I'm probably going to have to pull. It's solidly built, and that will do it. It's better to have a little bit more done and not quite enough. It's solidly built.
There we are. Okay, so the bell is cut and assembled. So now the thing is, what I need to do, there we are. Okay, so the bell is to now lay this out and see what it looks like. And now I'm going to iron these seams flat. So here's what I've done. You see this? Now lay this out and see what it looks like. And I'm going to iron. I've back stitched all these pieces together. Here's what I've done. 3 pieces of linen. They're stitched together. And now I'm going to flatten them out and iron these just so it's a little easier to keep. They're stitched together so it lays down nicely. It lies down. On play. There you go. So there's the back of the tent. So now I'm going to iron this, and then I will fill or lay them down and stitch them on to the back of the body of the tent. And then I will fill. And then we're ready to go to the front, get that assembly done, and then I can attach the front and the back to the body. So I need my towel iron to the front. Let's get after it. Okay, there's that. Where is my towel? Okay, there's that. Need a towel to protect the floor and the linen from the floor. As I'm ironing this, you can use an ironing board. It's more pain in the neck than useful. But do it as you like. You can use an ironing board. It's more pain in the neck than as you wish. I'm going to iron this. It's exciting. Well, no, but it's necessary. Exciting. What I want to do is keep some tension on this and make this Revolutionary War tent as close to an approximation of one as is possible today. What I want to do is keep some tension on this. Research I've done and the knowledge I have and experience. So I want to just iron these seams down so they lay flat. And so I've done and the knowledge I have and experience. And so here we go. I want to just iron these seams down so they lay flat. So I've done and the knowledge I have. Here we go. Linen irons beautifully under steam. Linen irons beautifully under steam. So, I'm going to flatten these seams, and I'm going to stitch this down, and it'll lay flat. It'll be a nice construction. So, I'm going to flatten these seams, and I'm going to stitch this down, and it'll lay flat. It'll be a nice construction.
Glad you're here. Hope this is as interesting to you as it is to me. Got any questions, put them in the chat. Glad you're here. I don't expect to see any. Most times when I ask that, people bail, but that's all to me. Got any questions, put them in the chat. Hope to provide YouTube content that is useful and entertaining in that order. About the useful part down, I don't know how to be entertaining about this, it's work. Useful, but it's good work. I think so anyhow. Recreating and preserving an old tradition. People have been making linen tents for at least 2,000 years. Old tradition. This tent approximates one that was in common use 250 years ago. Approximates one in common use, fascinating as I can make them. Here, all I'm doing right now is ironing these seams down so I can stitch them. When I do this, it will lay flat. All I'm doing right now is a strong seam down so I can go. When I do this, it will lay flat. I have a towel down so the linen is protected from the floor and the floor is protected from the steam. I have a towel down so the linen is protected from the floor and the floor is protected from the steam. I have a towel down so the floor. Okay. If you find this as irresistible as I do, subscribe to the channel. Get more exciting tent making action. If you find this as irresistible as I do, subscribe to those YouTube things that people do. More exciting tent making action. If you find this irresistible as I do, okay. Subscribe to those YouTube things that people do. More exciting tent making action. One more. Hello, Scout. Good morning. I'm pulling on this to create a bit of tension. I just want these to lay flat. It helps. A lot of steam. Linen loves steam. Just pulling on this to create a bit of tension. I just want these to lay really nice. There we go. Linen loves steam. Okay, so we're good to go. Now, on to the next phase, which is felling this down. Felling is just a simple whip stitch. Locks this down, and on to the next phase, which is flat. This is the back of the tent. Felling is just a simple whip stitch. Locks this down, and on to the next phase, which is flat. This is the back of the tent. All right, here we go. So, all right, here we go. So, store my needle. Put a little wax on my needle, or my thread, twine. The twine keeps the thread from falling apart when it's pulled through the linen dozens of times, because the linen is abrasive. Twine keeps the thread from falling apart when it's pulled through the linen dozens of times, because the linen is abrasive. Twine keeps the thread from falling apart when it's pulled through the linen dozens of times, because the linen is abrasive. Twine keeps the thread from falling apart. There we go. Okay. Now the really exciting part. There we go. Okay. Now the really exciting part. Like this is a laugh a minute here. Now the really so what we're going to do is I'm going to lock this. I stitched this part to this part. Laugh a minute here. Now iron this down, and I'm going to stitch along this outer edge. Lock this, and that'll create a strong seam. It becomes part of the structure. It's like the ribs of the ship. This outer edge. And it'll
keep the,
Create a strong seam.
keep the tent stable,
Structure.
more stable than it otherwise would be.
Ribs of the ship.
I don't wanna start here.
And it'll keep the,
I think I wanna go right, keep the tent stable, more stable than it otherwise would be.
ribs of the ship.
I don't wanna start here. Here we go. I think I wanna go right, keep the tent stable, more stable than it otherwise would be. Is this fascinating or what? I think it is. Go. Is this fascinating or what? Key to this part, if you're actually making one of these, it's part of the purpose of this live stream. I'm recording these for compilation into I want to make a shorter video that just shows, like, if you want to make an old-fashioned tent, here's how I do it, and maybe you'll learn something useful. I want to make a shorter video that just shows, like, if you want. In this case, the key to this part is to just be consistent. I do it. And when all my stitches, this is a problem that happens at the end. In this case, the key, sometimes this part, twine catches. What I want is for all the stitches to be roughly evenly spaced and about the same angle. So I like to check them as I go, just to make sure that they look roughly evenly spaced and about the same angle. If you do that, then you're distributing all the forces that are going to be applied to the tent, with the wind and the rain, or people throwing coats over them, all the other stuff that'll happen to your tent as you use it. Forces that are going to be applied to the tent, with the wind and the rain, or people throwing coats over them. Evenly. All the other stuff that'll happen to your tent as you use it. Hello, little kitten. What's up? Evenly. I'm going through 3 layers of heavy linen here. It's kind of tough. What's up? Tough but necessary, right? I'm going through 3 layers of heavy linen here. Hi. Did you have a good nap? Tough but necessary, right? I'm going through 3 layers of heavy linen here. I see. And there we go. So we've begun. Now I'll do this on both sides, and that'll keep all of this, there we go, falling apart. It'll keep it from frame. Do not scratch the tent. No. I'll do this on both sides, and that'll keep
Belly attack. Belly attack.
No. I'll do this on both sides, and that'll
Good girl. Hey. Belly attack. Belly attack. All right, let go. Let go. Ouch. Ow. 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 All right, let go. Undo the claws. Good girl. Thank you. Ow.
You want some breakfast?
Undo the claws.
Where's your ball? Where's your ball? You want some breakfast? Do you have a ball? You do. Where's your ball? Where's your ball? Where's your ball? That's not your ball. That's my shoe. Where's your ball? Where's your ball? That's not your ball. That's my shoe. You gonna help me sew? Very nice. All right, so I don't know if you can see this. Let me change the angle of the camera here, or not the angle, but the live view. Excuse me. Very nice. So I don't know if you can see this.
What I'm after, you can see that in the light, is just a series of even stitches, and that is just locking this selvage down. So here's the initial. Here's a cat attack. Here's the initial back stitching that I did, and now I ironed this down over, and now I'm felling or stitching this down to the other piece of linen. And this is what it looks like on the exterior of the tent. Ironed this down in that light, you can see it more easily. You want it roughly even. All the stitches are about the same width apart, the same length, the same angle.
It should just be consistent, and that way all the force that is applied to it in the future will be evenly distributed. And it looks nicer. It should just be consistent. The appearance of it is really secondary or tertiary due to the other stuff. I'm mainly interested in the strength appearance. I want this tent. I want this tent to be made so that at 3 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of a thunderstorm, I don't have a seam ripping open or having tent collapse or something. I want this tent to be made. My main goal is 3 o'clock in the morning. This tent ought to hold up in the storms, and mine, I have one that I made 10 or 15 years ago over here in the same way. And I've been through terrible storms with it. It holds up just great. And that is because it's made in this way.
And I've been through terrible storms with it.
And I should add, this way is based on a lot of research into how tents about 250 years ago for the British and presumably the American armies during the American Revolution were made. Similar materials, similar construction, similar ways of using them. So, similar materials, similar construction, similar ways of using them. So, this is a very simple stitch. It's just going in, hooking under, and out at an angle. Nothing to it. Almost nothing.
Very
to it.
simple
There's a little bit of force required just because the we're going through 3 layers of heavy linen here now. Nothing to it. It's not complicated and
A little bit of force
doesn't require a lot of.
Going through 3 layers of heavy linen.
There's nothing fancy about it. It's just it's not complicated and simple repetition. Requires a lot of shape right and get the stitch right. There's nothing fancy about it. It's just not complicated. I don't know if that makes any sense. Simple repetition. Requires a lot of shape right. Describe it right. Get the stitch right. There's nothing fancy about it. It's just I don't know if that makes any sense. The appearance of it really is just kind of a measure of the consistency. If it all looks about the same, and that does, the appearance of it really is just kind of a measure of the consistency.
Can you see that? Yeah.
If it all looks about the same,
Right.
that does.
Looks pretty good.
And nice and strong.
Really, it's just kind of a measure of consistency.
If it all looks about the same,
Right. Looks pretty good.
nice and strong.
Right. Looks pretty good.
Nice and strong. Oh no, kitten attack. It's a terrifying kitten. Oh, she's ferocious.
Don't scratch the linen, please. Thank you. What does thee wish? You have food? Nope. You want something to eat? All right. Give me just a moment. Are you hungry?
No kitten
Hungry?
attack. Oh, she's ferocious.
You want some breakfast? Come sit here. Good girl. Here you go. Nope. You want something to eat?
All right. Just a moment. Oh, they're purring. Are you hungry?
Chicken. You hungry? Good girl.
You continue to fell this down.
You didn't come over here. Am I on, is my audio on?
There's my
Yeah,
friends.
suggesting
Okay, so
audio
now
is
we
a
are
suggestion.
going to continue to fill this down.
Open stereo. Am I on, audio on? Excuse me. Yeah, suggesting
So
audio
now we
is a
are
suggestion.
continue
Yeah.
to fill this down.
Seems to be good, right? Excuse me. Yeah. Okay, close that. Yeah. Okay, excellent connection. 16 views, wonderful. I need to figure out how to make this more interesting to people. Anybody who tunes in here, 16 views, wonderful. How do I make this more
I need
interesting?
to figure out how to make this more.
I mean, I'm working, so
I don't know how
anybody
to make
who
work
tunes in
look
here,
fun.
but I'll do my best.
Wonderful.
How do I make this
sing or
more
tell
interesting?
jokes or something?
I mean, I'm working, so.
All I know is I've got a text mate. So here we go. Anyway, we're carrying on with the stitching. Want to space these evenly on the angles and the
So here we go.
coverage to be consistent. And want to space these evenly. Professional looking. And by professional, I mean mostly consistent and deliberate and functional. The main thing is functional. I want these to be strong seams because these help hold up the tent. At the end of each of these seams down at the ground level, there is a tent stake that holds it securely to the ground. Poles, two wooden uprights, and one horizontal pole in the ridge line of the tent provide the
Holes. And it
upright
just wouldn't-
anti-gravity function in one and then the stakes pull the tent down toward the ground, and that tension is what gives the thing its shape. And then the stakes and this little kit is what gives it its polarity. Really, darling. Hi. Stakes and this little kit is what gives it its polarity. Oh, that's purring. Hi. She's just learned to purr in the last couple of days. It's a very exciting advancement. Anyway. So here we go. She just learned to purr in the last couple of days. It's a very exciting advancement. Anyway. So we're going through 3 layers of heavy linen. I've got a waxed linen twine. It's so we're going through 3 layers of heavy linen. I've got a waxed during my light twine. I don't want to pierce you with the needle, so why don't you sit here? Where's your ball? You have a ball? Where's your ball? Excuse me. Where is your ball? Let's see. Where's your ball? Somewhere you have a ball. Where is your ball? Where's your ball? Is it over here? Somewhere you have a ball. Where's your ball? Oh, here's your ball. Look at this. Somewhere you have a ball. How about this? Come here. Oh, here's your ball. This is my old tent. This is about 10 or 15 years old, and it is almost as good. In fact, I'd say as good as the year it was made. 15 years old. It has been through all kinds of weather and lots of events around the country. As good as the year it was made. Yeah. It has been through all kinds of weather and lots of events. The hunting. And it provides a wonderful playground for a little kitten who's hunting, just learning to play ball and hunt. And it provides a wonderful playground for a little kitten. And it provides me a welcome respite. Just learning to play ball and hunt. It provides a wonderful playground for a little kitten. It provides me a welcome respite. So, I'm gonna carry on felling this down. When this is done, this gets attached to the back of the tent. Carry on felling this down. When this is well on our way to completion. This gets attached to the back. I'll be finishing this up in the next few days. The whole tent and all. It's tedious, but at least there's a lot of it to do in the next few days. The whole tent and all. It's tedious, but at least there's a lot of it to do. But if you do it consistently and evenly, it's tedious, but at least there's a lot. None of this is difficult. It's just some of it's time consuming. It probably takes more time to if you're making one of these. Just be forewarned. Some of it's time consuming. It probably takes more time to figure out the angles. Probably takes more get the pieces cut properly and get them all lined up than it does to sew. The sewing is just massive amount of repetition. And you want to keep it even and consistent all along. But really, the only stuff that requires a lot of effort is the geometry and that. You do that stuff, and the rest of it just is mechanical repetition. You do that stuff, and we're about ready for another piece here. I do want to occasionally like to check my seams, make sure that they're consistent. The stitches are even, and occasionally like to check. There we go. Look at that. I mean, that's pretty nice. That's work to be proud of, I think. And I know from experience that that's a strong seam. There we go. Look at that. I mean, I'm very pleased with it. That's pretty nice. That's work to be proud of. There we go. More. That's a strong seam. We get very pleased. There we go. More here in a moment, and add a new piece, and we're going to carry on down this seam, and we're going to do the other one. There we go. More here in a moment, and add a new piece, and we're going to carry on down this seam, and we're going to do the other one. There we go. More here in a moment, add a new piece, and we're going to carry on down this seam, and we're going to do the other one. That's it.
beeswax, linen twine. Okay. I've said this, I don't know, a dozen times since I began the project, but in case you haven't seen the other streams. Just, I know, a dozen times since I began the project. Step that helps, and I'm told with good authority that this is an authentic part of 18th century sewing. This helps, so the beeswax helps protect the twine or thread as you sew. Linen is coarse and abrasive. Beeswax helps by putting a thin coat of beeswax on it. It holds together better and doesn't fall apart. Putting a thin coat of beeswax on it. It holds together better and doesn't fall apart. Thin coat of beeswax on it. Holds together better. Doesn't fall apart. Holds together better. There we go. Right? Yeah. All right. So now we'll draw this through. There we go. Right? Yeah. All right. Draw this through. Scout, where's your ball? No, do not scratch. Don't. Scout, where's your ball? Where's your ball? Left over right, right over left. I'm just tying a square knot on this. So connect these pieces of twine and then this knot gets, this gets tucked in under the seam to visible. But then it just prevents it, the first couple of stitches from pulling out as I sew. It's tucked in under the seam to visible. I think I was told by the first couple of stitches from pulling out as I sew. I consider to be one of the, if not the, one of the preeminent experts in 18th century sewing. I consider to be one of that, they didn't tie them off, they just tucked the seams in and just stitched, and there was never a problem. They didn't tie them off. Habit I developed a long time ago because I was clumsy and I've kept it. In any case, it is invisible, and I think gives it a bit of stability. Otherwise, it might be black. One of the problems I run into is this stuff self-knots occasionally, just because there's a natural twist to it. It's the way the twine is made, it's twisted as the fiber. And so by doing that, by untwisting it, I reduce the possibility of it not twisted as the fiber, which you do not want. Our little kitten, Scout here, is fascinated by strings and twine and wires. By lately, I mean just the last few days. She just showed up a few days ago, well, about a week ago. She was 10 feet up in our maple tree out front. We don't know if she was abandoned and dropped off, or if she wandered here from a neighboring farm. 10 feet up in our maple tree. Excuse me. Thank you. In any event, it was freezing, so we brought her in. Excuse me. Thank you. After trying some of the local, some of our neighbors really, nobody seemed to know where she came from. Nobody had any cats who had, some of our neighbors really lost part of their litters. So Scout is now part of our family. Part of their litters. So, excuse me, miss, please. I know this is fascinating. Miss, please. In a minute, I think I'm going to show you your ball and go to work on chasing it or fascinating. That was hilarious this afternoon. What do you think of that? You like that? Chasing it or fascinating. That was hilarious this afternoon. I think it's time, right? Okay, you are adorable, but distracting. It's time. I want to focus lights. Smooth that seam down a bit.
One of the things I want to avoid is puckering and stretching or too much slack in these seams. You want to just flat and consistent all the way
One of the
down
things
the
I want
line.
to avoid is
If
puckering.
you do that, you wind up with a really nice finished product. And by a nice finished product, I mean, it looks good, but it also, in a storm, it's gonna hold up well, the seam is strong, gives structural support. There's nothing that really stands out about it, it is just super consistent.
Look at this.
There's nothing that really stands out
Look,
about it.
it's your ball. Ready? Go. Good girl. Look, it's your ball. Ready? Go. Good girl. Look, it's your ball. Ready? Good girl.
One of the things I'm doing that's not visible is I push through, and again, I apologize for the low quality of the camera, but that's the best I have at the moment. Push through and I'm hitting my middle finger here, and then I turn it a bit and start to go through, but I can push through and feel, I can hear it clicking or feel it more than I hear it. Turn it a bit. Clicking against the threads, and I can almost count the threads that it's going against, so catching a few there, and it just keeps a consistent length of the stitch that's visible on the other side of there, and on the outside. This is the inside, this seam, and then the opposite obviously is the outside. I'll show that in just a minute. This is the inside of these. Just a tip in case you're doing one of these. And this works on, you know, whatever you're sewing. It doesn't have to be a Revolutionary War tent. You can sew a jacket or a shirt, or it works on also things like that. You just get it by feel as you do it. The more of these you practice, the more you get a feel for your tools and materials.
Things like that, you just get it.
And somebody,
as you do it.
I mentioned this earlier. I asked, how many of a certain part of sewing do you have to do before you're good at it? He said, only the first 10,000 are hard.
How many,
He was joking,
part of sewing,
but he's not really joking. It's,
only the first 10,000.
he's right.
How many,
Practice, practice, practice. The more you do, the more you get a feel for your tools and your materials. And this really goes for anything, not just sewing, but tent construction or clothing or anything like that.
Look at that. There we go. Now that is a nice looking seam.
So the stitches are
All roughly the same length. Some are a little wider, some are a little narrower than each other.
roughly the same spacing. They're consistent.
This makes it's making a nice strong seam.
And that's a 10th.
It'll hold up.
It looks good.
Carry on. And I think we're past the halfway point on this one. Hold up.
Looks good.
Carry on.
Here we go.
We're past the halfway point on this one.
Here we go.
Past the halfway point.
Okay. The best part of doing something like this for yourself is that at the end of all this labor, you have something that you built for yourself or for someone you care about. This for yourself is that, and if it's taken good care of, really you don't have to take that much care of it. Something that tent that I had dumped on the floor there, you know, kept it dry. It's taken it or put it away wet. We haven't abused it over the years. We've taken it camping more times than I can count. Used it in all kinds of weather and kept it dry. It's taken it or put it away wet. It's in great shape. It's protected us from thunderstorms and snow, and frost, and hot sun, wind. It's in great shape. So you do this labor, thunderstorms and snow, and frost. The amount of care you put into it is minuscule compared to the amount of enjoyment you get out of it once you've done it. The amount of care you put into it, a lot of works like that. But there's something about making this thing with your hands and your heart and your mind that is very satisfying. A lot of works like that. There's something about making this thing. There's this book I read a long time ago by Marvin Harris. I forget the name of the book. He made the point in it that years and years ago, like, centuries, millennia ago, civilization, when people operated very differently than they do today in our modern society. Things were made better when you're making them for yourself. And I think the example he used, if you're making a canoe for your mother-in-law, you're going to make it differently than if you're just working in a factory making a canoe for some random stranger. That when you make things for people you care about, you're going to make it people you know, people you're related to, friends, yourself, your family.
Random stranger.
when you make things for people.
There's a different
You're going to make it.
expectation of quality that you put into your own work. I don't know if that's always true. I mean, I know there are people who take, there's probably a lot of them, who take great care and pride in doing good work, working in a factory, making a canoe for, Coleman or, whomever makes canoes these days. Care and pride in doing good work, working in a factory. But there's something to be said for making things for people you know and doing them well. Because you're making arrows that are going to help feed your family. Maybe you are really concentrating on doing it with a purpose
that are
and
going
care.
to feed your family.
I mean, naturally, now, you know, now the more I think about it, I don't know that it's true that you wouldn't purpose, even though you don't know their care. Let's just think about that a little bit more. Anyway,
Naturally,
now, you know,
I'm just
now the
thinking
more I
about
think
it.
about it, I don't know that it's true that you wouldn't. That stitch, even though you don't know there, let's see what this looks like. Anyway, how are we doing? That stitch. There, let's see what this looks like. Keep on keeping on. Okay, so we've got another 1.5 foot or so to go. Actually, less than a foot really to get to the end here. I think I'm keeping on. Just under 1.5 foot gets us past where the hem is going to be. And that's as far as I want to go because I am probably going to have to pull, just as I did on the other ones. I think I'm probably going to have to pull
Just under 1.5 foot.
out, as in cut out the,
That's as far as
the last couple of inches. I like to sew just a little bit past what I need and then remove them so that it's all a tight structure.
last couple of inches.
All the way down from the top to the bottom. And then I put it together, I'll remove which ones I don't need. But then it's completely sewed as far as is required. And it's all consistent. If you do it all at the same time, you're more likely to get it. But then it's completely really, as far as is required, good.
And it's all
You can do it, but
you do it all at the same time, you're more
if I
likely.
do a stitch today and I do another one on Tuesday, it's going to be, well, maybe they're gonna be very close, but
And it's all.
I think it's more likely that I'll get them consistent if I do it all stitch today and I do another one on Tuesday. It's going to be, do them all and then pull the ones I don't need, rather than very close, but do most of them and then try to fill in and consistent. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody but myself, but do them all and then pull the ones. I'm just thinking aloud here in order to hopefully help those of you who are interested in doing this kind of thing for yourself. I suppose you could really use any kind of material. I really like linen. Excuse me.
Excuse me.
How are you doing? I suppose you could really use any kind of material. I really like linen. Okay. Where's your ball? Go get your ball.
Excuse me.
Um,
I forget where I was, but.
I got where's your ball on this? Get your ball. No, anyway, linen as a material, 4/10 is great. The way it reacts in the rain, it swells up, all the fibers tighten up when it gets wet, saturates, dries fairly quickly if there's a nice breeze and some
Linen as a
sunshine.
material, 4/10 is great.
The way it reacts in the rain, it swells up. Antibacterial properties.
When it gets wet,
Saturates, dries fairly quickly. This has been used for, I think, at least 4,000 years. So it's not like a new untested material. We've been using it since, well, at least halfway through the dawn of civilization, 4,000 years. So it's not like a new. There's a lot to be said, I think, for that kind of testing over cultures all around the world over such a long period of time. You know, we have a lot of modern materials and techniques and tools and testing over systems that, such a long period of time. It seems like a great material, it seems like a great thing. And linen has been around for most of what we understand to be recorded history. Most, there's something to be said for that. Understand to be recorded history, that kind of testing, that utility, something to be said for thousands of years, all around the world. That kind of testing. All right, so I think I'm going to stop at this point here because I am past my marks here. I want at least a few inches. I may have to pull like 2 inches of stitches out of this at this end, but I don't need to go all the way down because I know a good deal of this is getting cut off at the very end. So I'm gonna lock this in now with just a, it's not really a knot, it's just at this end. There's a loop through and then run my needle through it just so a good deal of this is getting cut off. And
there we are. That's that.
Now, it's just-
That. Drop this in coax.
We have one seam completed, and that's really nice. That's part of the bell. I'm gonna stretch this out just so you can see it.
Got a little cat attacking my ankles.
Which is fun.
One seam
Amusing. That's really nice. She's awfully cute.
right
See it.
away.
I'm gonna lay this out so we can take a look at it. She's awfully cute. This is the back of the tent. It's called the bell because it resembles a bell in profile. It's a tent setup.
Lay this out so we can look at that. There we go. We have a nice seam.
It's nicely filled.
The back of the tent.
Very pleased.
How much? I don't know if the camera's catching any of that, but
Tent setup. That looks exactly as it ought to.
nice.